Hi guys, it's Gib. We're going to be painting a philodendron today. I have my paints and my watercolor brushes and my water and my sketch. Then we're going to mix a little bit of water and a little bit of the light green, and we're going to give it a good base overlay. You just want to give the overall leaf a nice light green color. And this is a little bit of a yellow green. Depending on what your brand, you're looking for green and yellow green color. And I'm using my sketch underneath to help guide my strokes. We're trying to keep it within the outline of the leaf itself. I'm looking to see that there's some light values. And even when there's a highlight to it, it might be the softest of the green. So that's going to be the light watered down version of the light green. Now we're going to make a medium green and start layering it together. Because the light green is still wet, the medium green, when you lay it on there, it'll mix and it'll blend well. If you can see, it's starting to bleed into the other area, whereas this dry area that I'm painting, it is the dry technique, so you're able to keep your edges pristine. But when it's wet on wet, your edges will blend. So this one is wet on wet here, where I have this dark green, and wherever it touches the light green, it'll start blending into the light green color. So we're going to mix a little bit more of that color, and then also the yellow green, and then we're going to find like a value scale between the two, the medium green and the light green. Again, my style is very loose. It's not going to be photorealistic. There are a lot of artists on YouTube that have a photorealistic look, but I am not one of them. Mine is more loose and whimsical. And now I'm laying down a little bit of a line that shows like the stem of the leaf. Because that light green is dry underneath, you can see that it's not blending, but that's the effect I want it to be. I want to have a nice hard line where the stem is. Now I'm going around the perimeter so that the perimeter of the leaf has a hard edge. And then I'm working my way to the center of the leaf. And again, my strokes are in the direction that the leaf will form. So you don't want to go against or in the opposite direction, because or cross direction, because then it won't look realistic. Even though I have a loose style, I still want to keep the strokes more realistic. I'm just getting very linear with the strokes. If you look really close at a leaf, it has these little linear edges to it, so it's not a flat leaf, and that's what gives it some interest. So again, I'm using a little bit of a darker color. I'm kind of outlining where I want to keep my little voids, and then once I pull some water close to that outline, it moves the color. Next is a brighter green, more like an emerald green or a Kelly green. And so you can see now I have different colors of green in my leaf. I try to keep the varying shades of green, because I don't think a leaf is just one single green. It's lots of shades of green, depending on where the highlights and where the shadow is. Now I'm going to take some time to build up the green value shades. So as you can see, I've left some areas white where I think some highlights will be, and then I am building my medium green and leaving some of the peaks of the very, very light green, so that it looks like there's highlights to it, and it's not, there's white highlights and then there's some light green highlights, and I am using this contour brush, and I'm building some medium tones now. And again, I'm using the lines, the shape of the leaf to guide me. Because some of this area is dry, it'll have a hard line, and some areas are still wet, so it'll be blended. So I am just playing with hard and soft edges in my composition to give it some interest. Now we're mixing a little darker value, some like dark blue greens and some of the medium greens, and I am building some darker value. Again, layering. A lot of watercolor is about layers. You've got your base layer, and then you've got the ones on top where you're building families, taking that hue and playing with it and building a deeper, darker tone. And that's why you see some people have hair dryers when they're doing some watercolor, so they can dry the base layer so that the lines are crisp and hard. And if you want to blend it, sometimes that's where people flood it a little bit more with water so that it takes two colors and blends them together. Right now, because the base for this area is dry, it is a sharp edge. Now we're going to pick up the speed a little bit so I can show you how you're using the lines on a base that's already dry, and you're going to do small thin strokes to really show the texture of the leaf, and you're leaving some areas between visible so you can still see the nuance of a light value, a medium value, and then as I go along I'm going to pick it up and make it a darker value. But you can see, because the paint underneath is dry, you can see the lines show up a little bit more. So I'm switching to a finer brush. It's a round brush still, but it's a smaller tip, so that way I can get details. So the edges, like the small shadows of the leaf, how it turns, you can see that the line, and it makes it pop. So I'm defining the edges a little bit more. So the inside of the leaf is still loose, which is the way I approach watercolor. But now I want to still keep my edges crisp. And I'm using the fine round brush to define the grooves, the textures of the leaves. So that it doesn't appear flat. So when you're painting, you want to give, the family of the color, light, dark, medium, making sure to pay attention to highlights and the shadows. And you also want to think about the texture that the item is. Now it's just a matter of layering on the same colors, dry, letting it dry in between applications of color, using line technique, thinking about the direction that the leaf will grow, and then just building a variety of colors and to get some interest. So you can still see some light values and some medium values and some dark values. Now I'm working on the right side of the leaf to give it some more interest, to get it darker. So it doesn't look photorealistic, but it still looks like a leaf. It's got some interest to it. It's not just a solid void of one color. So using some lines close together to give it an appearance that it's darker in that area. And coming back with the darker values, I'm really trying to punch up the shadows. So what happens is once it dries, all your colors get lighter. So you have to come back and darken the values that you want to make dark. Sometimes it takes several passes, and that's how you have to approach watercolor. When you think you're going super dark, but when it dries, you'll see that you didn't go very dark at all. And that's it. That is my finished example of the leaf. Thanks so much for joining me. The supplies I've used can be found below. Be sure to subscribe for more watercolor tutorials.